Welcome to the Music is My Life podcast from Berklee Online. I'm your host, Pat Healy, and take note of Kira Roessler. Kira recently released her solo debut. Wait, why are we featuring somebody on a podcast called Music is My Life if this is only the person's first release? Well, that's because Kira has a vast musical background that led her to release this self-titled album on the Kitten Robot label. She is perhaps best known as the bassist for the legendary hardcore band Black Flag. She also played in Dose with Mike Watt, to whom she was married for a time, and played with Watt and other members of his band the Minutemen and Black Flag in the experimental crossover group called Minute Flag. Kira is also an award-winning dialogue editor, working on such productions as Mad Max Fury Road and Game of Thrones. She's currently working on something pretty marvelous right now, but that's all I'll say about that. So, the musical journey of one of hardcore music's hardest working, hardest rocking bassists began with classical piano. Let's let Kira tell you all about it.
My father was very one note. He was classical music and classical music only. So actually that's quite a bit of the earliest stuff that I know. And when I was 6, the way I remember it, my brother may remember it differently, is that I said I wanted to learn to play piano. My mom make this commitment that we had to practice half an hour every day, and she'd get us lessons. So we started with classical piano. He was 9 and I was 6. So it was very much influenced by my dad's musical taste to start with.
How long did that last?
So I played piano for 5 years until I was 11, and I fell behind. I got sick or something and missed some lessons, and I'm hugely competitive. So big surprise, I fell behind my older brother playing piano, and I got so frustrated that I quit.
Okay, and did he keep going with piano?
Yes.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Always played keyboards, feels like my whole life, yes.
And so when did you start back up playing again? Was there anything before you picked up the bass?
No, it was just a few years of sort of not knowing that music was my life. And then what happened was my brother was playing in this progressive rock band called Arc Squared. And they had this 40-minute piece that was this opera called The Ark. And I realized when his bass player quit that I could play with him if I just played a different instrument. I didn't have to compete. And so they lost their bass player, and I borrowed a bass and started practicing in my room a whole bunch of hours, trying to be good enough to be in his prog rock band. So that was really my initial motivation to do the bass. Although later I always felt like, this is weird, I'm left-handed. So the left hand on the piano is the bass lines, right? So I always felt like maybe there was a sort of back of my mind connection there. Of course, wasn't smart and played bass left-handed, which would have been clever. But I didn't realize till I played with drums that you want your strong hand picking. I thought, cool, my strong hand is on the neck. And then I started playing with the drummer backwards that way.
That's really interesting because I'm also a lefty and I also play righty. And until now, I thought you'd want your fretting hand to be your strong hand also.
Absolute disaster. My right hand is trashed from trying to be, bottom line is you play with a drummer and you suddenly need all this power and it's in your weak hand. At least that's how, I would always tell a lefty bass student or person that asked, I would always tell them to play left-handed.
So tell me this, during this whole time, were you listening also to prog rock or what were you into?
Really, my brother's taste was more of that, Jethro Tull, yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, that was his world. My world was really, probably first records I was buying was Elton John, and then went straight to Bowie and the Rolling Stones, and that was really more my thing, although Paul liked all of it, and Paul loved the Beatles. He was, in a way, more dedicated to more kinds of music, whereas I was staying up all night listening to Bowie and the Stones. I was obsessed. On my walls was Bowie and the Stones, so I was a lot more narrow. But I did have a connection to him. So because he was doing this thing and it was this sort of important thing to him, it started to become something that I wanted to be a part of. And so I started practicing really hard and never got good enough to join the band. And then he quit and got into punk rock. Lucky for me, because I didn't have to be as good.
So wait, you didn't end up playing on the concert?
Nope. Actually, their singer, picked up the bass and started doing the bass lines. And yeah, I didn't ever get to join the Arc Squared band.
I think I'd read somewhere that you spent some time in the Caribbean also.
That was yes, that was from when I was 8 till I was 11. So I was playing classical piano. Had a teacher there. That's where I quit. Was in Curacao, an island called Curacao. It's off the coast of Venezuela. There's the ABC Islands. Aruba is more famous, maybe, but Curacao is a major island right there. And my dad was into underwater photography and scuba diving, so that was why we were there. And we scuba dived a lot, and he did a lot of photography there in the Caribbean for 3 years.
So now when you did quit piano and your brother was doing prog rock and you were playing along and listening to the Stones and Bowie, what was going on with your parents? Were they approving of this new direction?
Well, my parents divorced when I was 13, so I hadn't picked up the bass yet. We moved to LA because my aunt, her sister, was here, and that was where Paul got into the prog rock band. He was playing in bands earlier. He was playing with a guy who eventually I would play with on a bunch of projects, and he played on my solo record that just came out. So there's this guy in the background. You see him. He's my brother's cohort in Northern California. And then we moved to LA, and for a while we're not in touch. But he follows us to LA to be in punk rock.
Cool. Who's that?
This is Glenn Brown. And Glenn Brown is an amazing guitar player. And he very much was influenced by the Stones type, very rock and roll guy. But he, I don't know why, he dropped everything. He moved down. We lived in this horrible crash pad because my mom moved away and did punk rock. And he would be the guitar player in all of these bands I played with. And we still correspond today.
And so what was the official first band you played in?
The official first band I played in was called Wax, WAXX. My brother played drums because he thought the keyboards didn't have a place in punk rock. He didn't know there was a keyboard band out there, so he was playing drums. This guy, Glenn Brown, on guitar, and a friend of my brother's singing. And we played our first gig at the Whiskey Go-Go when I was 16.
Wow. Did you have a fake ID?
No, that was Whiskey would let underage kids in when they were doing punk rock, which they would constantly say, no more punk rock. And then they do it again. But when they were doing it, there was not an age limit.
So what year are we talking then? What year is Wax?
So I'm 16, so that would be 1977. We had these friends, Pat Ruthenberg and Paul Beam, who eventually became Pat Smear and Darby Crash. They started the Germs. The Germs was the first show I saw at the Whiskey before Wax ever played. And so we did have this connection, these people we knew who were sort of Bowie-like in high school and then switched into the punk rock thing and did the Germs. So 77, I was already, going to gigs, hanging out. What I figured was if I hung out at like sound check at the bands and stuff, meet the people who played, then I'd find people to play with, Plus, if you show up at soundcheck, maybe you'll get in for free because I was always broke.
So then you were in a band with Pat also.
Twisted Roots, my brother's band, had several incarnations, one of which Pat was in. The initial one was Pat on guitar, me on bass. Maggie, who I met in high school and indoctrinated into punk rock, was our singer. That was Twisted Roots, and it was all my brother's music, and he was the boss. I always say this, music is not a democracy generally in a band. It's usually the songwriter. Like people perceive it a lot of times as the singer, but it's generally the songwriter, which is Paul. In that case, so it was Paul's band. He got to kick me out a few times of different incarnations, and because he's the boss.
How did your relationship settle into you still are doing stuff together, and it's just great to see that it changed from a competitive place to a complimentary place. But I guess it wasn't without its friction if he was kicking you out a bunch.
No, I mean, we were siblings. We had a lot of ups and downs in our relationship. But when my mom moved away, there was also this sort of interdependence that developed where it was kind of survival mode, because really we weren't ready. I was 15, we were not ready, but we were trying to sort of hold it together. I was going to school every day. I was committed to proving to my mom that I didn't have to go there because she wanted me to go with her when she moved away. And I begged her to let me stay with Paul. So we had this sort of interdependence money wise, just to pay the rent, for a while. And our relationship basically went from combative, but realizing we kind of needed each other to, a few years down the line, it became purely collaborative, when we started playing. It took a while for Paul to figure out that I was a good bass player. You know what I mean? It's weird. It was kind of hard for him. I think I remember when I first went on tour and I came back from tour, I played with him and he was just like, wow, it was like then he could recognize that, I was a lot stronger then, but it's basically the same person, It was interesting. It took him a little while. I think he always felt that and still in some ways, he's the professional musician. I still do have another career and do this at 6 a.m. and when I'm not doing jobs, so there is that thing where he has the upper hand being the true artist and I'm the hobbyist. But it's definitely changed when he started working on my music and doing some, producing of my music and really sitting in back and letting me be the artist. I think it really changed because he was like, oh, okay, this Kira thing, I can step back and watch it and it's kind of cool and I can contribute and make it cool. But it took a long time to get there.
So when you said your mom went away, does that mean it was just the two of you on your own? Like your dad wasn't there either?
Right.
Wow.
They got divorced when I was 13. Moved to LA, and then mom basically met someone and wanted to move to the Florida Keys, really bumfuck Florida, right? Like dirt roads. And I was like, I will run away if you make me go. Let me stay here. Paul's 18. Let me stay here with him. He was in no way ready either, by the way. So yeah, it was just us. And then we had this crash pad where we had a couple other people help rent this house. And in Van Nuys, I went to Van Nuys High in 10th grade. And that's where that journey started of us trying to survive in LA by ourselves.
That's amazing. I never knew that element of the story. So you're playing with all these bands. Wax is the first one. Is there any recorded output from any of the other bands?
Twisted Roots does have some recordings. Wax didn't. I played in a band called The Visitors. No. Monsters. No. Same guitar player, though, in all these. What happened was my brother joined the Screamers, right? So he finally gets in a band that actually gets to play keyboards in, and they're a popular band. So it's really cool. So me and the guitar player keep on going on the guitar songs, and he was mostly the songwriter. And we had a few bands with different singers that we played with. And then I also tried to have all girl band, Sex Sick, which never recorded anything formally. So there's a bunch of bands that played locally, didn't tour, but played around with different bands for years.
So then comes after high school and you go to college, but you're still playing in all these bands.
Yes.
And then is there anything in between there that are you ever thinking that maybe this is something I really want to do forever? Or was it still, you mentioned hobbies.
Well, yeah. What happened to me was that the hardship of having no money as a kid and really struggling financially, it kind of created this split between the way Paul and I looked at things. He had started in Northridge when I was still in high school. He went to California University at Northridge, and he quit to go on tour with the Screamers. And that was a moment when I realized that, like, I was too concerned about poverty, literally, that I didn't want to be the starving artist. Watching his path really affected me, and I was like, I'm not going to quit college. I'm going to get a degree, even if I want to do music. I'm going to have a plan B. I was very, very pragmatic about it. I had to study something that I would be able to work in, and I had that sort of fixed in my mind that I could do both, and I would do both, and I was scared of his path.
Well, what made you choose computers so early? We're talking like 1980, right?
Everybody was starting to use computers. There's computers in every company, right? So it was that. But really, there's a tie-in. My father started the computer department at Yale University. He was around with those big rooms of computers playing Pong. Like, he was way back. So that I remember going to the big machine room and watching the little thing play Pong. I remember that really significantly. So that affected my choice too. Between that and the fact that it just seemed like it'd be easy to get a job if I could just know computers.
Right. So you're at school and studying and still playing in bands. And then how does the invitation to join Black Flag come?
Truly the punk rock scene is not very big at this time. It's kind of hard for people now to get it because it's so not underground, but you have to think about it being really an underground thing. And it's really maybe only a few hundred people, right? And the people who are actually playing on stage, it's even fewer, right? So I saw Black Flag in all their incarnations. They saw bands that I played in, you know what I mean? So it was incestuous enough that we all knew each other. It wasn't like some grand meeting, we knew each other. And I actually dated Henry briefly. And then I was playing actually in DC3 with Dez. Oh yeah, we decided to do this sort of power trio thing, and we were practicing at the same place Black Flag was practicing. So there was already all this connection, right? It was really just getting started with DC3 when Henry called me up and said, so Chuck's out. Do you want to come jam with Bill and Greg? There's going to be nothing between us. And I said, yeah, I got it. I get it. He had to make sure that boundary was set, and I get it. So I stayed after practice, basically, just to jam with Bill and Greg. They acted like they knew nothing about it. So I don't know exactly what Henry's deal was, but maybe they did. I mean, anyway, we jammed.
You knew nothing about you having like a dating history, you mean?
No. They didn't know that I was supposed to stay after and jam with them. I said, hey, should I stay and jam? And they were like, oh, really? Okay. Sort of like that. Like, it wasn't like it was a prearranged thing, which I thought it was. And I loved Black Flag. They were my favorite band, right? So it was a little awkward, that moment when I realized they don't even know, that I was going to practice with them. And I felt a little bit like I was foisting myself upon them. So I was practicing with DC3, and Henry asked me to stay late to jam with them, and they seemed like they didn't know. And then we jammed, and it went really, really well. Like, that very night, asked me to join, and I said, I know you guys tour a lot. I knew them. I knew who they were. I was in awe of them, in the sense that they were touring, and they were turning this into a bigger thing than a lot of the LA bands were. But I said, I got to finish school. I was 3 years into my 4-year degree. So I said, I will take quarters off to tour, but, I'm going to finish school. And they agreed to work around my schedule, which didn't work out very well at all. But that comes later. At first, it seemed like it would work out fine, right? I'll take off this quarter. And anyway, so we practice and we're getting ready to record our first record and then, go on tour.
At that point, what was your favorite song that you inherited, that you got to play, that you'd always wanted to play?
Like I said, I've seen all of their thing, so I was sure there were songs like Nervous Breakdown, but something like My War, the anthem My War. I mean, we basically did the My War tour, right? Like, they never toured after that album came out. Greg played bass on that album, and we toured on the My War tour. That was, we were doing the side 2 slow stuff. We were, so I sort of jumped in right as we were doing My War, even though that record was recorded. They'd had an injunction against their name for a while. So there was a sort of backlog of songs. And now we were free to record. So My War was recorded, and we recorded Slip It In and Family Man at the same time during a 48-hour lockout. And then we went on tour to support My War before Slip It In even came out.
Right. Was the injunction from the Pest company or from a previous member?
Unicorn Records put out Damaged and then wasn't paying them. They had a two record contract. They refused to make the second record for them. So Unicorn sues them against it, put an injunction against them using the name Black Flag. So when I first joined, they were still dealing with the legal battle and trying to do a lot of the research themselves to save money. And we owed lawyers a huge amount of money. When we did the My War tour, we were sending money home to the lawyers to pay off that bill, the legal bill, basically. That was that injunction.
Yeah, I know. And there had been even previous injunctions against using the name, and recently, I think it was just Flag for a while, right?
Well, no, what happened was there were new bands, in a sense, right? Like, so some of the members of Black Flag get together and they're going to go tour and they're going to play these songs. And Greg was not involved. So Greg had to sort of say, I own the name Black Flag. He had to exert that authority that was him. They couldn't use it. They never were, I don't think, planning on using it. They went out as Flag with the idea that people would know kind of what the history was. And they started doing some live stuff as Flag. And Greg then in turn did some gigs with Black Flag. It was just a little peacock dance, little male ego thing going on.
I don't want to get too much into it, being a woman in the men's scene, because I know you've spoken about that at length, but was there a lot of peacocking going on in that scene? And I think about that part of the Who's Got the 10.5 album where Henry's making fun of all that stuff.
So really small scene, lots of women. I mean, one of the things that blew my mind about early punk rock scene and the fanzines and stuff is there were these women on the cover of fanzines that were not in bands. They were just cool looking. They were, in a way, they were defining the style that was punk rock, and it blew my mind. They were kind of famous in this little scene, even though they weren't really doing anything but being really cool punk rock women with the my makeup, and the outfits and stuff. They were defining it. And shit, I was a tomboy. I was not that, right? My mom left when I was 15. I didn't know how to dress or be a woman or anything. I was a total tomboy, right? I was hanging with the guys. I was going to practice or going to gigs early to move equipment, right? And there's these women who were on covers of, it was very supportive in a way of women. Women were really important in that early punk rock scene. Now, what happened was that as it spread a little in Los Angeles, you had people from Orange County and this sort of influx started happening. And there was this misperception started happening, right? Like we were pogoing and they thought we were like bumping into each other. We were like having fun, right? But they looked at it and went, wow, you like slam into each other. And it turns into this, oh, you slam into, I'm just going to go to this gig and slam. And it becomes this thing where all these people just come just to get their aggro out in a way, right? And there's places where I wouldn't even go to the gig because it was just that. That's all people were there for. They weren't watching the bands, I was there to watch the music. So the aggro, sort of punk rock peacock did come in as the scene grew a little, and I think almost misunderstood what our thing was. And it sort of molded into this other thing, but it was cool because there were more people, there were more clubs to play. You could go down south to play the Cuckoo's Nest in Orange County or, whatever, San Diego, so it's spreading. And there's pluses and minuses with that.
So you're in the band. Well, when did you get the tattoo?
Oh, right after I joined. Me and Henry went to his tattoo artist and he got the one on his back of his neck at the same time I got mine. I was thinking about getting the tattoo, honestly, before I was in the band. They were my favorite band. So there was no doubt in my mind that I would get it as soon as I joined.
Did Greg even have one?
No, neither Greg nor Bill had one. Chuck doesn't have one that I know of.
Yeah, that's true. They might have gotten one in the ensuing years.
I don't know.
Victory over the legal battle of peacocking.
Well, the thing for me is that what the bars represented for me, and this is why I could have it for the rest of my life. For me, it meant whatever you do, do it all the way. And it was a sort of a concept that I felt like I could live with my whole life.
So you're playing in the band, you record the 2 albums in a 48-hour period. Is there any sort of instruction that is put out by and you've got some songwriting credits, but you were talking about, like, the songwriter, like, rules the band. But, like, what kind of dynamic is there in the composition and the recording process? And, like, is there a lot of "you do this," or
Greg's the boss. Okay, so that's just a given. Greg's the boss. He makes the decisions. He made the decision to bring me in, to bring Bill in, to fire Chuck. All of this is all coming from Greg, right? So Greg writes most of the songs, and literally in practice, Greg will sit there and go, "Okay, Kira, this is na 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 na, and you do this, you know." So he's basically laying it out at that level. That's why you never hear me in the core songs. You don't never hear me play anything but the main thing, right? I become, in a way, me and the drummer just have to hold it up so Greg can solo, right? Some of these instrumental songs and these wild jams, I'm just holding down the fort with the riff, and they're Greg's riffs, right? So he shows me the riff, and then so a lot of it is just that. It's just I'm this almost doing like I used to liken it to play, like training for the Olympics. Like it was it was a physical test, and it was mental fortitude test, but it was not a creative test at all. Just do this most of the time, right? So the little bit of songwriting and the little bit of shift you get and my favorite actually records of Black Flags are when we're jamming in the place, you know, there's a practice pad, we're playing these instrumentals, and Henry's sitting in the corner because we ran through a set and he sang some, and he's writing lyrics to some of these. And these are my favorite songs where they were going to be an instrumental record. He sat and wrote lyrics and turned them into these really cool songs, and they're quite different than a Greg song in terms of the vocals. And Henry's singing his own thing, so he's emoting more of himself in those. He emotes better in the Chuck stuff and in the stuff that he wrote. To me, like he's actually able to be himself. The party down kind of thing of Greg's, the slip it in, the party down thing, it's a little less Henry's thing, you know. He's happy to do it, but it's not really totally representing him.
I'm the One is one of those ones where Henry's in the corner writing lyrics, right?
Yes, and that was one. Me and Bill are just jamming. Greg's probably busy doing an interview or something upstairs, and me and Bill are jamming. And I whip out this old Sexic song and start showing Bill just for fun, showing him the structure and just playing it. And we started just playing that. And Henry is in the corner and writing new lyrics to it. So there's 2 songs that were basically already Sexic songs with different lyrics. The riffs and the bass lines and stuff turned into a couple of songs. And Bill did the same. He showed us stuff, and one of his songs comes out. But that's the exception.
So, but you are in this band for it ends up only being 2 years, but it's just an insanely prolific amount of output during those 2 years. What is it, like 3, 4 albums?
Well, it's 3 studio, 2 instrumental, and 2 live. So it's 7 records. I always thought it was 7, and it's a little more than 2 years. But yeah, I mean there was not. It's not like we took breaks. You know, if we were home, we were practicing and recording. If we were away, we were doing that, right? So I would be literally dumped out at UCLA from the van after tour, like, okay, start the next quarter. And I'm like walking into calculus classes, having just, had my ears blasted out for a couple of months. And there I am studying applied math. And then after UCLA, after school, get in a car and go down to practice, and you practice for 5 hours, because to play 2 hours live, Black Flag level, you have to practice 5. Right? Because the intensity live is going to be way more. So we're practicing 5 hours a day. Greg will then go on and jam with some people after that, because guitar just isn't as physical. And me and Bill will walk away like, okay, Next time, see you next time. And Henry even less, right? It's like Henry can do 2, and then me and Bill can kind of do 5, and then Greg could play for 10 hours, no problem.
So it's interesting, though, you mentioned the Olympic feat of it all and building up that sort of stamina, but what were you doing to exercise the creative side? And because you were obviously improving as you kept at it.
No creativity at all. You have to think of this time, like I said, as I was basically just a journeyman doing my craft, but doing it to spec, to somebody else's thing. I didn't think about writing songs. I didn't think about really varying my parts. It's funny. I heard a rumor, not a rumor. Somebody told me that Greg said after he saw me play in Dose years later, I never knew Kira could do stuff like that, and I was like, well, but you told me, in my mind, he said, play this, He didn't say, okay, play this and then do your own thing. He said, play this. There may have been a miscommunication there. I don't know.
So tell me about Dose then. You met Mike, obviously you were contemporaries when he was Mike Watt, when he was in the Minutemen.
Right. He's on SST. So we see him at SST, and seen the Minutemen play many times. So yes, very, very connected. In 1985, Minutemen played the first week. They were the opening band. Well, that was really when first time I got to know Mike a little bit, was on that week of tour. And when he left, he asked me to write lyrics that he would use for Minutemen songs. So that was the first time when I was like, some of my sort of journal type writing turned into more structured songs and sent to Mike to. So there is, you're right, a little creativity going on with lyrics and stuff in the band.
Yeah. So, and then you and he started playing as the Dose or Dose.
Mm-hmm. I was in Florida when Mike's lost Boon, and he called me, and I was so sad for him but you have to realize that he lost his best friend as well as his career. He lost everything really that day. And I knew it because I knew him well enough to know he was not someone who I was even sure could stand on his own 2 feet without Boon, When I got home, my thought was, I got to get him to keep playing. And so we would sit in his room and we would just mess around with stuff. Like I had been doing these bedtime stories for my nephews. After Black Flag, I started doing these bedtime stories on my 4-track cassette recorder, where I would read the story and then I would write 2 weaving bass lines under it, because I thought, it was kind of bass is warm and stuff. It'll help put my nephews to sleep. And some of that became the early Dose songs, as well as some jams that we did. And really my goal was just to get them to play. But one of the things we realized, and I think we did maybe harken back to Minute Flag, was that if we were going to do 2 basses, we certainly couldn't have any other instruments. We both believed in the bass guitar as lead instrument. So it was like, we don't need anybody else for this, right? No, just be the 2 of us. We're strong enough personalities and real enough bass players. This is what we're going to do. So it became a concept, and we did a little bit of playing, but really the majority of Dose playing was after fIREHOSE starts. And I would go join them on tour and play 4 dates with Dose opening for fIREHOSE, or when we were home, we might do some Dose stuff. But fIREHOSE became his main thing. And Dose was always sort of this little redheaded stepchild or oddball out. But Dose was always that. I was working a job. I started working in computers. After I was out of Black Flag, I had to, start working. So I went to Connecticut for a year because my dad started the computer department at Yale University. I went and worked there for a year and then came back. We recorded the first Dose record while I was still living in Connecticut. We had been sending back and forth cassettes, and I came home from Connecticut to record the Dose record and to visit family and stuff. See, with Dose, it's so much about the songwriting, right? Because it has to be these very intricate, intertwining parts. And so it's all about the songwriting, which is part of what makes it so slow, right? Because if you don't spend enough time on it, it just doesn't move. And that was always Dose. It was like it never moved along because it was not enough time being put into it. I always have some songs in the works that could be Dose songs even today. I'm still a 2 bass kind of thinking person. Mike's always had 1 to 10 other projects
And then you two had a relationship also.
We were married, and we were dating even when I was in Connecticut, sending tapes back and forth. I came home to live with him, and we got married on 87, I think. And yeah, we were married for 7 years, and those continued after that. And there was a commitment there. I felt like I had committed a lifelong thing in a way, and those gave us a context in which to have a relationship after our marriage ended.
And so when you're playing this stuff that you were playing in DOS, I guess where'd you get the chops? Is it just hours spent on your own figuring stuff out, or
Depends on what you mean by get the chops. You mean the writing?
the playing? Because I mean, it's certainly a different type of playing than you did in Black Flag, and it's so much more melodic and exploratory, you know?
Yeah.
So how did you develop that?
Well, I mean, I would credit Black Flag in this somewhat in the sense that we did do a lot of jamming. There was freeform jamming, which I don't enjoy watching. Like I'm not into doing that other than just in your room for yourselves. It's fun, but I'm not into having to watch people jam. But anyway, we did some of that during Black Flag, and then and Mike and I, like I said, our first work was kind of jamming, and I think that I told you the bedtime stories I did was probably the beginning of it, right, where I was starting to. I would lay down a bass line, it was like, okay, just come up with a few riffs and I would play them. And then the second bass had to do something different, right? Or you can't just pile on, right? So I started learning how to weave the second, and I spent hours and hours. You don't know how many hours of bedtime stories we're talking about here. I went from Dr. Seuss to Edgar Allan Poe over the course of many years, so that was probably the open space, the blank canvas I had and had to figure out, what to do with it. And I would repeat a lot in those story tapes. I would repeat a lot, right? But when I pulled riffs out of that and turned them into songs, there were some cool riffs and already some ideas for the intertwining thing for Mike. So it helped us formalize the process. So that'll get the credit.
Yeah. Did they ever digitize Aunt Kira's recordings?
No, as a matter of fact, it was all done on 4-track cassette deck, which eventually broke and is a format that you can't just unwind, right? And then I think at one time my brother did hand me a set of the kids' cassettes. I think I somewhere may still have a set of cassettes that are the story tapes.
So you do DOS, and then when does the career in film begin?
Okay, so I was in computers for 11 years, programmer type person. I moved up in the ranks in the programming type world, and I had several big projects canceled. Like you put your heart and soul into the thing, and then they say no, never mind, and and then I'd move to another job, and we'd do a good big project. And I was just starting to learn that the corporate world didn't fit me that well. Like you're just a cog in a machine, which is great if you just want to clock in and do your hours. But if you want to feel like a part of something, like a contributing part of something, it's not a great format. I was always in the IT department in a company that did something else to make its money. So we were just a cost center to them, So there's this resistance to the corporate world. I'm still nonconformist punk rocker, and continue on to this day, right? So it's hard for me to fit into that. But I met through my brother who had me play bass. He was composing for a guy who was working for a USC film school, working on student films, and my brother was composing music for it, and they had me come in and do a bass line. And this guy, Brian Franklin, who I met there, I sort of realized, right, this is it. This is the most perfect fit. It's computers and sound, it's like, what a great thing, right? So I get to know this guy and beg him basically to hire me. I take a huge cut and pay, I work for $8.75 an hour to answer your phones. I'll do your admin, I'll help you with your company, and I'll eventually learn to do this, and so that's what I did. And it was interesting. Dialogue tends to be a little skew, a little female. Sound effects and explosions and cars and guns, that tends to be a little more male. So in this tiny little company, they all preferred to go that way. And I saw that there was an opportunity if I could just learn to do dialogue. So it was somewhat need based, but I started to learn dialogue there. And I've been very lucky in my career to meet people and get offered jobs and stuff.
When you say doing dialogue, is it mostly just figuring out how to bring out the dialogue like in an EQ sort of way, or?
I know it's confusing. I know. What the hell does a dialogue editor do? Right? They record it on the set, and they record all like one scene. They'll record many times from different angles, right? They'll have the wide shot, they'll have the two shot, they'll have the close up on you, the close up on that, and they'll do the scene 25 times, let's say. And the picture editor comes along and chops it all up. It's like, I'm going to do the I'm going to have cut over here. Cut. So when I get it, it sounds like right? Puzzle pieces bumping into each other. One of my first jobs is to smooth that out so that you can't hear that it's taken from 25 different takes of the scene, right? If it's a story point sound, it should be there. But if somebody in the crew drops something and it makes a big crash, that's not on screen. I got to try to solve it. So then you're trying to see how much you can do to clear out problems in a way. Oh, there's a plane. It's not, there's no planes in the movie. Got to try to noise reduce that thing. So no, you don't do a lot of EQing because that's really more the mixing process, but I'm prepping it for the mixer. So I'm organizing tracks and tracks of dialogue so that it makes sense to the mixer. There's sort of standards, and you lay it out so that it's easy for the next guy. That's your job, to take that, turn it into something that he can do, right? If there's real big problems, I recommend ADR, and they go in the studio and they record the line and replace it, and we record all the background people talking. So it's really everything that's talking in the movie is dialogue, and ADR is where I work.
Right. And you did some Foley also, or no?
Only in the very beginning, yes.
And then, so you've won an Emmy and an Oscar, right?
I have 2 Emmys, one for John Adams and one for Game of Thrones season 2. And then I worked on a team, Academy Award winning team. It's funny, in the Emmys, they give the whole teams the hardware, but they don't do that in the Oscars. So I do not have an Oscar sitting here. I worked on a team. The team leaders get the hardware, and we get thanked.
So with all this sound editing, are you able to find that creative fulfillment we had talked about?
Well, so now time management is a lot of what it's about. When I'm working, it's like even right now, frankly, I should be over there working. Right. So working is like working on music has to be really organized. So I often have like a set of songs I'm working on. I have a spreadsheet that has kind of where the status is. And then I have that stuff on my Pro Tools on my laptop, and then maybe at 6 a.m, I sit down and do half an hour of work and push it along a little further, and then go to work. And then, because at the end of the day doing this, I got nothing left. So it has to happen in the morning or on the weekends. You do some creative stuff, right? And then, but the cool thing is about this work is that it ends. The project ends, and maybe there's a spot between, and then I can do a bunch of stuff. And now that my career is kind of going well enough, I can even calculate those times. I don't have to say yes to everything that I'm asked to do. I can say, well, I'm going to take these months off to do this, and then I'll work on something down the road. So it's very much, I've learned to make a half hour do something, and it's very much like it's always been. It's slow going. I mean, my solo record was 13 years in the making. It's a chronological story that really starts 13 years ago and comes to present.
I love that. With this album, your first solo album, you've said that this set of songs tells a story.
Yes.
What is that story?
Well, it's a story of love and loss, basically. My music has always been super personal, right? I've never really figured out how to tell somebody else's stories. It's got to come from here. So it just starts as trying to express the love and the difficulty of, and then knowing that I'm gonna lose it, and then losing it, and then what's it like years after it's gone. So simply, it's something I'm trying to express, something that I think everybody can identify with, but by using my own story. So love and loss is something that most all of us can understand. The specifics of it really doesn't matter, right? I mean, I'll tell you, it's not a secret, but it's not. I mean, there's a dog on the cover, so you may kind of guess this. But for me, it was. I raised that dog from a baby, and I've never had kids. And for me, this was the story of the love of this dog. And then he got sick, and I lost him, and then I have to express what that's like. So there's been other songs during these 13 years, but it is when Paul asked me he said Kitten Robot wants to put out your solo record, and I'd always said no to such concepts before. I thought, well, I'm 60, I'll do it. I'll put out this record, and I knew that I had this set of songs that made sense as a group, because that's the other part, is that I just have a bunch of songs, right? And then you have to figure out how to turn that into something specific with a bow around it. And that's a hard part these days. I have a bunch more songs, conceptually there's more records there, but it's not, that's the part that I'm not as good at, and isn't as important to me, frankly, to hear what other people think about it. Really, I mean, I do music because that's who I am, but it's not necessarily about what you think.
Yeah, it's funny. I had on my list of questions who's the dog on the cover, and I had no idea that it was all about the dog. What was the dog's name?
The dog's name is Hombrito, little man. He was the breed is a Bichon Frise, it's called, and just a little white furry dog, a little puffball, and he was he was my best pal, and I knew I was losing him, so there were songs about that, and then there were songs about what it's like now.
Well, I'd seen in the press release that you're a bass player first and foremost, and then a sound editor, dog mom, loving wife, and a loner. But so you are a dog mom to another dog now?
Three,
Wow.
what
Okay.
three little white puffballs still. I have a type. I've got Jim, who was Umbrito's little brother, who's now 14, 15 maybe, and getting old, totally deaf. And then Hank's the middle problem child. And then Madison, the little girl, we call Stinky.
That's great. Does Hank take his name from a certain singer you were in a band with?
He does not. It
No.
was really my husband. The shelter that had named him Hayden, and we thought that was very preppy. And my husband knew of this Hank the cow dog. This is a story, a kid's story. He was the one who coined Hank. So Hayden turned to Hank that way.
We talked about you playing the stuff that Greg had given you to play, and this being your first solo album. Traditionally, it's like the bass is traditionally seen as such a supporting instrument, but was it hard for you to take center stage with this release, to finally step out and say, yeah, this is my statement?
Well, since it's mostly in the room, that part's not hard. Playing live, which I did on a live stream in December, and now I have a Los Angeles date looming over me. That part is hard. I'm not, being the front person to a band. I mean, in those, I somewhat was. Mike always tried to take on stage. He was very much like to stay behind me when I'm at the mic and stuff. So I've got familiar with the idea of being a front person through Dose, but yeah, that part's a little, having to do the visual part, having to make a video, for example. I'm an audio person, so creating the cover, all of that kind of stuff was hard.
And your brother plays on this album.
Yes, and co-produced.
So I love that the relationship has really come full circle. I mean, it's funny when you were talking about it, all the words you used were C words, like competitive. It was like started as competitive, then collaborative. No, competitive, then combative, then collaborative,
Yes.
and now co-producer. So
Yes. Well, relationships are complicated, and he's the only one who's been in LA all this time. I haven't lived in the same town as my parents for so many years, right? So when it comes to prime family, Paul is my family. As you grow up a little bit, you realize the value of someone that close and important in your life. You come to accept them for who they are, which is, after all, this is, to me, on my mind, the definition of love, right? You accept them completely, exactly the way they are.
who are some of the other guests on the album?
Well, Glenn Brown plays guitar. This is all a virtual band. He sent it to him. He sent stuff back, and so Glenn Brown plays. My amazing friend Dave Bach plays drums on many of the songs, and he's actually does what I do. He's a dialogue ADR person in the sound world, but secretly he's this amazing drummer, and he has a studio where he does his work, where he also can record drums. And actually, my brother, as producer, has sent Dave many songs to play drums on. So he's become very much a part of this sort of way of working where we work virtually on the songs. And then Paul actually does a lot of the, so the finishing up of the songs. Is it complete, or does it need something more as we start thinking about tying a bow around it? And Petra Hayden is a friend who, if you don't know who she is, you're missing out.
Oh yeah, she's from That Dog.
She's from That Dog. She also has put out solo records like The Who Sells Out, doing every single bloody instrument on it, and it's pretty epic. So she is a very talented singer and violinist, and she is very key in a couple of the songs.
We haven't really touched upon who your influences were, and it's interesting because the Black Flag period, when people first came to know your playing, you kind of said that the influence was obviously Greg by default.
See, this is the thing. I would say that anyway. I think the people I play with influence me much more than the people I listen to. Frankly, as the one person who's influenced me probably the most that I listen to is Billie Holiday, just because I've been a fan since I was in junior high school, and this ability of hers to express an emotion so completely, and just encapsulating in her voice, and her being able to emote that way and make people feel that way has been a huge influence on me. I mean, I always say, when people really force me to say best bass player, I say, well, the ones who do make the exact right bass lines for their thing. I mean, Paul McCartney is perfect for the Beatles. ZZ Top has the perfect bass player who we just lost, who plays exactly what's right for the band. I don't want to hear how good of a bass player you are. I want to hear how you encapsulate that music. The Black Flag, I did exactly what was right for that band, and that's what you have to do. I don't want to hear something that takes me out of the music because you do this fancy thing. So I love bass players who do just exactly what's right for the song.
Now, do you think if Black Flag in its time if it led to a sustainable career, you didn't have to do music as a hobby, but you could pursue it as a living, do you think you'd still be doing it? Or do you think having it as a hobby has enabled you to maintain the interest?
You have to realize that when I was in Black Flag, we were starving artists and sleeping on floors and stuff, remember?
Right.
So,
oh, I read the book.
My point is, you acting like, well, if Black Flag kept going as a viable way, it's not exactly a viable way to support yourself. I didn't have a home. I was homeless when I was in Black Flag. So if you think of it that way, there's a problem sustaining that, really. I mean, I would have tried to sustain that, absolutely, for as long as I could, but there wasn't. I never perceived there being a lot of money in it, and I had this idea that I didn't want to be a starving artist. So I think it was inevitable, let's say, that I would work some way other than music in order to. What has facilitated is I get to make this weird ass music that nobody necessarily has to like. You know, I don't have to make a living at music, which is a really difficult thing to do, especially if you're trying to play what you want to play, right? So I get to do whatever I want. Bad downside, I only get to do that half an hour a day some days, you know?
So, but will there be another album, do you think?
Don't know.
Yeah.
Good chance there won't be, but you never know.
How does it feel to have it this testament to, after all these years, this testament to what you can do?
It felt right. Like I said, it felt right to have one moment to say, this is me, in one moment to say, this encapsulates something that I feel really connected to and strongly with, and I'll share it, and whatever you guys think is fine. And I don't know if there's anything else, because this is now, and I've become very connected to staying here and now.
Kira Roessler, staying connected to here and now. And if you want to get more connected with your music in here and now, give Berklee Online a shot. And as a listener of this podcast, you can try a Berklee Online course for $100 off the usual price. Just visit musicismylifepod.com and you'll find all the info you need there. This episode was edited by Talia Smith, mastered by Jose David Vindismora. All visual assets coordinated by Mike DeBenedictis. Social media by Brooke Larson. Web assistance courtesy of Mark Thomas, Steve Zimmerman, and Joe McDonough. Thanks to our video team who posts these episodes on YouTube 2 weeks after they premiere on podcast services. I wrote and recorded the Music Is My Life theme song, but the expert remixing comes courtesy of Lily Dickinson. Special thanks to Gabriel Reifer-Cohen, Greg Fauscher, Ray Roldan, Jack Grisham, and you. Please leave a review on iTunes and leave us 5 stars on the Spotify app so more listeners like you can find us. Stay inspired, listeners. Talk soon.